Well, we're back again to continue with the series of videos on the Antichrist and the end times. And in this video, what I'd like to talk about is a lot of the time expressions that are associated with end times in Daniel and in Revelation. And I want to go over some of the very common mistakes people make in regards to those time frames. And it has to do with conversion of units, thinking it's like changing inches to feet, or maybe quarts to gallons, which in everyday practice that applies. But when you get into Revelation, there are nuances involved, that those conversions are not exactly the same. And first of all, we have to take the time frame expressions and decide whether they're in the first half of the 7 years coming up or in the second half of the 7 years coming up. So, to make a long story short, the like time frames are grouped together and they're put in the appropriate half. And so let's go over some of those time frames. In Daniel 7:25, which deals with the little horn person, it's a time times half time, that expression. And in the general sense, it refers to 3.5 years, generally speaking. It can be a little bit more, can be a little bit less. Depends on the application. So we have in Daniel 7:25, the time times the half times. We also have that in Daniel 12:7. And also in Revelation 12:14, that Satan, the amount of time expression that he has left after he gets booted down to earth for his final foray, shall we say. He'll be a terror during that time, but he'll be a terror no more when Jesus returns. That's in Ezekiel 28:16 through 19. So we got that time times half times. Then we have 1,260 days in Revelation 11:3, which is the two witnesses' time, and Revelation 12:6, which Israel is metaphorically in the wilderness being fed. What they're actually being fed is the two witnesses are feeding them the Word of God about what's going to come up real shortly with this Antichrist person betraying them, and the abomination of desolation will be set on Temple Mount to flee when they see that. The two witnesses will be in Israel, Jerusalem, and they'll be witnesses to Israel because it cannot be expected for the Jewish people, I'm saying Jewish people, the ones who are currently Judaism, reject Jesus, for them to really be extremely knowledgeable of the Christian, what I'm calling the Christian Bible, which is the New Testament. They don't like their Bible, which is the Tanakh, being called the Old Testament. It's kind of an insult to them. So I'm saying Christian Testament, but I'm referring to the New Testament plus what Christians call the Old Testament, or more appropriately, we can call it the Tanakh. So we have that 1,260 days in Revelation 11:3 and Revelation 12:6, and then the third the third time frame we want to talk about is 42 months. That's in Revelation 12:6. Excuse me, my bad. The 42 months is in Revelation 11:2, which the nations have control of what's called the outer court in Jerusalem, which is basically saying they're going to be occupying the city, is what it's actually saying. So that's for 42 months. Then that's at 42 months that after this person becomes the beast, he'll be ruling the world, and he'll be doing so in the absence, unhampered by the two witnesses who he will have killed, and they'll be gone from the earth. So he's at 42 months unhampered, which is in Revelation 13, I think it's verse 5. So we got one more item that we have to look at. When the two witnesses are killed, their bodies remain dead in the streets of Jerusalem 3.5 days until God brings them back to life. He says, come up hither, they ascend to heaven, they're gone from the earth. So we have to take all those time frames and decide where they're going, first half or second half. Now, to my side, I've got it broken down. The 1260 days is the first half of the 7 years. The 42 months, the 3.5 days, and the times, half of times are in the, I'm saying in for a reason rather than saying they are the second half. They're in the second half, and I'm saying that for a reason. Of the 7 years, they're in the 7 years in the second half. Now, why am I saying in the second half? Because we have 7 years in Revelation, but there's no place in Revelation that it states 7 years as a unit. We have to take these segments, add them together, and come up with 7 years. And 7 years times 360 days a year is our 2,520 days. So we're going to have 2,520 days. So if we take Revelation 11, I'm showing this on to my side, we're going to add the 1,260 days, first half, plus the 3.5 days, which has bled over into the beginning of the second half. So we add those two together. We come up with 1,263.5 days. So we subtract that from our 2,520 days, and we come up with 1,256.5, could say 0.5 days, 1,256 days. Well, that's cumbersome to say. And what the Bible does, instead of saying 1,256.5 days, it takes a more generalized wording and says 42 months. So you don't convert the 42 months to 1,260 days. That's the common mistake, because the 42 months, it's very close to being 1,260 days, but it's not exactly 1,260 days. So if you look to my side, you'll see how that math works out. We have another place in Revelation where the 7 years are. In Revelation 12, let me mention the first 5 verses in Revelation 12 give a historic perspective of Jesus' first coming, Satan's attempt to destroy him before he was even born. But Jesus was caught up to God and his throne. That's the first 5 verses in Revelation 12. And they are there for several reasons, but one of the reasons is to identify the woman in the rest of Revelation 12 as being Israel. It's not the church. Israel is the one, unto us a child is born. That's what it says in the Tanakh. Now, Well, we got in Revelation 12:6, we got the 1260 days, first half. Then we got another factor that we got to take into consideration to add to that 1260 days. Right after that 1260 days, at the end of it, the two witnesses are killed, and the seventh angel sounds his trumpet, which is going to be the finalization of God's plan to take Satan and his mystery kingdom Babylon out from power. So there's a war in heaven as part of this plan to cast them down to earth, Satan and his third of the angels. So that takes some earth time for that war to take place. We're not told, we have no idea whether it's an hour, 3 days, 1 day, 2 weeks. We just don't know how much earth time passes. But that time factors in to our overall computation of the 7 years. So we take the 1260 days plus the time for the war in heaven to take place. That's second heaven, because Satan was banned from the first heaven eons ago when he first decided to rebel against God. He can only go there under controlled conditions as God calls him to appear before him. The other third of the angels, they have no way of going into the third heaven where God's throne is. They're just their realm is the cosmos and earth. That's where they can flow freely in, but they're banned from the third heaven. So when Satan and his angels are cast down to earth, he's only got the expression time times halftime, and that's a little less than 1260 days, because we have the 1260 plus the earth time that passes for the war in heaven. That leaves a little less than 1260 days. So when we add those three elements together, we're going to end up with 7 years, 2,520 days. So that's what we're looking at, and be careful when you start doing conversions and thinking that's, hey, I'm being smart. I'm converting 42 months into 1,260 days. No, it don't work like that. In Bible prophecy and Revelation, places it's mentioned there. And one of the indications that it's not an exact conversion of 42 months to 1,260 days. In one verse, in Revelation 11:2, it's 42 months. Well, if it was the same, they would just say 42 months in the next verse, 11:3. But it doesn't say 42 months. It says 1,260 days. So what we do, we're going to put all the like terms together. The 1,260 days, first half, it's exact. The other three terms fit into the second half. So once you get all this straight, it becomes more and more clear how things are going to fit together. And the approach I'm speaking about of understanding these prophecies is event-driven. We look at events, how they happen, and we have to always consider the arch-villain of the end time will be, start out as a little horn, that funks the role, leader of Europe. Then he becomes the king of Israel, anointed by the false prophet. And that's when he becomes the Antichrist. He's in that functional role for about 3 years. We don't know exactly how long, but around 3 years. Then when he betrays the Jews and the covenant he had confirmed earlier, he betrays them, and then he becomes the beast. He will not be doing these really awful things as the king of Israel when he's the beast. When he's a beast and having been rejected from continuing as the king of Israel, the 10 kings or leaders in Europe will hand over their kingdom to him. And that will be his kingdom of the beast will be the EU, and it probably will have allies of the United States and Canada in a lesser role at that time, because Europe will be the main power structure, which when they hand it over to him, it's not going to be like when he is the little horn. It's going to be different because he's going to be the dictator of the EU. And that's when a lot of things start to really happen bad, is when he becomes that dictator of the EU, and the world is going to have to play by his game, or you're not going to be able to. He's going to make it hard to survive. I'm not saying you can't survive. You can survive, especially those in Israel who heed Jesus' word to flee into the mountains right away when they see these things, the abomination, desolation, set up on Temple Mount. Flee into the mountains right away. Don't dilly-dally around. Don't try to salvage your life, your retirement plan. Go right away. Jesus says, don't even pack, because if you try to save your life, you'll lose it. And what he's meaning by that, there's a good chance that you'll be martyred or executed for not worshiping that idol image made of this beast person. It's all about that beast person. That he's got this huge ego. He starts out with a huge ego, and so that kind of concludes this video. I'm going to talk about some more information in the next video. Thank you very much for your time. Hope to see you in the next video. Bye-bye.